I'm going to turn it over to our next speaker, Mr. Phil Kaatz, MSU Extension Forage Educator, and he's going to talk about the details to forage excellence. And this gentleman needs no introduction, but however, he can introduce himself. Mr. Kaatz, it's all you.
Thank you, Cable. Well, it's always a pleasure to have a chance to give a presentation at the conference. Usually I'm working in the background a little bit or doing other things, but it's always nice to give a presentation. And really, this presentation is the result of a lot of years of working in extension and in other agribusiness related industries for my career. Because when I talk to farmers, I make a point of getting to the point where I can say, what makes you a really good producer? And I talk to people that I respect, people that I learn from, people that have shared what they do and how they do things with me. And so really this is just a short survey and information that's a result of some of those conversations I've had through the years with many producers. And I want to say that MSU is an affirmative action, equal opportunity employer. We are open to all, and we do take this seriously. And we're thankful that we have an opportunity to present our data and our information to anyone that's interested. Well, I'm going to echo what Dr. Hancock said, details matter. Wow. He said a mouthful, but he said it over and over again. I think that what he talked about just dovetails right into my presentation because not only Dr. Hancock, but Tom talked about it, John talked about it, Mike talked about it, producers that you know and respect, they know that they need to make money. We need to have profitable farms. We need to have farms that are efficient. And if we don't pay attention to those details that are out there, these efficiencies are not going to take place. We need to have people that are viable in their operations because let's face it, we are producing food and fiber for a lot of people out there. And we need to have viable farms. We need to have people that are producing what we need each and every day. And then when we talk about some of the things that matter today, we've talked a lot about cover crops. We've talked about forages and how they relate to soil health. It's really a sustainability issue. We want to make sure that we're good stewards of the land that we have and what we farm. And so details matter in each and every category when we put this together. Now, some of the things that I'm going to talk about, they're not in any particular order, but I think they all matter. And these are just some of my top picks. Dr. Hancock said it, be prepared. Top producers are always prepared. They're ready to go in the springtime. They're ready to go when it's time to harvest. They have a plan. That plan is something that's not thought of at the last minute. When they talk about being ready to go for the spring, they've got their seed ordered. It's either delivered on the farm or it's ready to go when they need it, and inputs are in place whenever they need to go. And I think that it's one of those things where many times people today, if they're waiting for the last minute to do any of the details I'll talk about, then they're always behind. And usually I'm going to say that you never get over a poor start or a good start, but I would prefer to have everyone have a great start. You need to be ready to plant or harvest on time. Kim talked about the differences in quality and yield with some of our harvest systems that we have out there. And I think that that particular point, especially for a forage producer, is so critical. Maturity on those forages counts, not whether it's corn silage, whether it's haylage, whether it's dry hay, but in order to get that type of quality that you want, make sure that your machinery is well maintained and adjusted properly. A great picture from Dr. Undersander out of the University of Wisconsin showed how do you adjust those rolls as you condition that alfalfa when you're going through the field. Make sure that you do this ahead of time to know that you're getting the proper crushing on that forage as it goes through. Why? Mike talked about it. John talked about it. Dr. Hancock, you need to get the hay dry in a relative short amount of time. And time is precious in Michigan when you're making forages. I like to think that you need to know what your markets are. And what are the quality needs of those different types of livestock that you're actually going to be marketing your product to? We know that very high quality dairy alfalfa takes the best that we have. We also know that growing calves and those early young heifers take a very high quality of forage. Sometimes it's a matter of knowing what you have and where you can market it, because I know that each and every year you're going to have different types of forage during the season that you're going to have to market. And so knowing where that can go and how do you get that different type of forage into the right people's hands is really critical and important. One of the things that we've not talked about today, really at any level, is making sure that your soil nutrient levels are at optimum. pH, phosphorus, potassium, along with sulfur and boron, those are all critical parts of your soil nutrient that needs to be in place. And if it's not only will your yield suffer, but your profitability will suffer at the same time. So remember, a good soil test at $20 an acre or at $20 per sample, not even per acre, is critical to knowing what you have so that you don't overspend or underspend on those soil nutrient levels. And one thing that I've learned from our people that are involved with our weed science is, excuse me, always start clean when you're planting. Tom talked about getting rid of some of those really pesky weeds, those quack grasses. We've got thistles. We may have different things that are out there in these hay fields. We have many weeds today that are resistant to Roundup and glyphosate. So you need to be able to rotate, but starting with a clean seed bed, weed-free, is so very, very important for having the type of quality of forages that you want. Weed control prior to planting, not at planting, is the way to do that. Plan on those quality changes every year, and knowing what you have. I have now it's old, this Forage Master hay probe. I can use it to probe my hay bales. If you're really an old timer, you've got the old probe that you actually use some muscle with it. But I'm going to say today we've gotten to the point where people are using drills, but you need to have the opportunity to measure the quality of those forages. So when you market it, people will know this has the dairy quality or cow quality, whatever kind of quality you want to have. And I've learned this from people that are actually on today. Use the best platform that works for your market. If you're working with horses, they don't have storage for many times the size bales of a 4x6 large square bale. They prefer those small square bales. So use a platform that works for your market. Dairies can normally take those larger platforms. And so even John Streeter talked about taking and resizing bales from a larger platform to a smaller platform, but make sure it works for the market where you're putting that information. Small squares, round bales, large squares, whatever you're using, do it at the best quality that you can get. Now, here's something that I want you to think about. Know when to rotate or renovate a field. Many times producers will keep a field way too long. This is actually data that came out of Michigan and across the Midwest based on university trials. And you can see that after several years of cutting alfalfa 3 to 4 times a year, we start to lose the stand. And so what we have for year 1 and 2 at 100% yield drops to around 80% in year 3, and year 4, we're dropping even more. So know when to rotate out of an alfalfa field, especially. It pays to know your numbers, but it also pays to know when to get out when the getting gets right, because you can always go to a cornfield and realize that additional value for corn silage or corn with the nitrogen. Top producers know their numbers. All of our producers today talked about their numbers. Now I'm going to say their cost numbers. They know what it takes to produce a ton of hay. They know what their real yields are. And the best producers, they have higher yields and they also have higher quality. So when you consider the fact that higher profitability farms will incorporate both of these two aspects of high quality yields and high quality alfalfa or grass. They know what their variable costs are for seed, fertilizer, labor, and repairs. But it's interesting when you look at the top producers versus the bottom producers, it's not that they spend a lot more money on fertilizer. That's not the case. And I'll show you what I mean. But we do have an opportunity for people to realize I can know my numbers, and we have put together a crop budgeting tool for forages where you can put your own numbers in and come up with some of the figures that I'm talking about today. They also know what their fixed costs are, which includes the insurance, the land rents, interest, depreciation, those fixed costs that are out there. You have to know those things in order to know exactly what it costs to produce the type of forage that you're producing on your farm. And like I said, the top 20% versus the average or the bottom 20%, I'm going to say the top is right here in high quality and high yields. The bottom 20% are going to have lower quality and lower yields, and rarely do they make a profitable enterprise with those kinds of yields and quality factors. In fact, I'm going to show you that in alfalfa hay, this is really crop enterprise analysis that is based on Michigan, Ohio, Wisconsin, and Minnesota producers, over 2,000 farms, alfalfa farms. The top 20% yielded 6 tons per acre, the bottom 20% under 4 tons per acre. What does that do to the bottom line? Well, net return per acre, 10 times the value for the top producers versus the bottom producers. Wow. How can you stay in business if you're only making $45 an acre? Many of these farms are not able to have 2, 3, 4, 5,000 acres of forages. Some that do, they have, if they're a top producer, they have higher profitability. If it's a mixed hay type of situation, again, the same principles apply. The yields are higher. The value that they get on a per ton basis is higher. So the value per acre is higher. And look at the net income differences between the top 20% and the bottom 20%. There's no comparison. A minus $139 per acre for the mixed hay with poor quality and poor yield. Wow. If that doesn't make you think twice about doing something and doing it not the right way, maybe you're in the wrong business. Well, all of that, and I could go on with this for a long time, but it's a short talk today. But I do think that it's important to pay attention to those details, to have a plan, stick to the plan, know your costs, be prepared and execute the plan that you have. And one of the things that I didn't talk about earlier, but it is important, is to go back and evaluate annually. What are you doing? How did you do things? Can you improve? What can you do to make things just a little bit better? Because I'm not asking anyone to make wholesale changes from year to year. I'm asking people to improve every year. We only get so many chances between years to improve. A little bit makes a big difference. And with that, Cable, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And if there are any questions or comments, I'll be glad to do my best to answer them.
If you have questions for Mr. Kaatz, go ahead and put them in the chat. I don't see any. Dr. Cassida did put something about joining the Michigan Forage Council in the chat. So if you're not a Michigan Forage Council member, please check that out. And Tom answered one about rain insurance, and he also put his email address in there. I don't see any questions.
Pretty common sense type of approach today, but I think it's important for people to think about these things when they're looking at the forage business.